Think of a teenager you know. Have you ever seen them with other people and thought, hang on, they're not like that when they're with me? I don't mean a little bit different, I mean a species change. And then after observing that, have you thought to yourself, how can they have that connection with that person and not with me? Have you rationalised it, dismissed it, or maybe even been secretly hurt by it? Parent, I'm looking at you that's mainly contacted in scenarios of crisis. Money, rescuing, fixing stuff. And here's a thought. If you weren't related to this teenager and you were just crossing paths in day-to-day life, just in the community or in work, would you interact with each other? Would you like each other? And people that work with teenagers, have you almost felt that some of what you're saying has fallen on deaf ears because of the script they've heard so many times? Mentoring, support, transferable skills, personal development, and. Have you maybe just met a young person and there's hostility from the beginning and you thought, right, this is going to be interesting, what's going to go on here? Or if your profession is to transform some form of skill base to a teenager, but you're very much aware that your personal relationship with them is stopping that, what do you do? So I'm a youth worker and I've managed, delivered, set up projects for the past 18 years. And early on in my career, when I was a teenager myself, I kind of acknowledged that I'm a nice guy, I try to be. But being really frank with myself, the work I was doing was ineffective. I was ineffective. And I cared about the potential of this work. So I actively started to experiment with different ways of working so it could fulfill the potential that my roles provided. When I think of a particular situation in a midway point in my career, when I was working in a pupil referral unit. So for those that don't know, a pupil is excluded from secondary school, but it's still a duty of care to provide with an education, hence a pupil referral unit. So I was the music workshop guy teaching music, so the cool guy, right? The pupils could choose what they studied, and a lot of them chose music. Not because of a deep artistic calling, but they saw it as the chilling option to not do much. I worked with mainly young men, still on the whole do. Didn't like each other much. Confrontations were frequent, verbal and physical. And in the area of where I was working, there was a history of vandalism on people's cars. And there was a couple of occasions where my car was being eyed up a bit, where I had to sort of say, listen, stop looking at my car in a certain way, and otherwise there may be a situation. So anyway, work with this group of young people, there's a lot going on. And on site, I noticed there's an unused kitchen. And I thought, I've noticed the young people aren't really eating that well. Cans of Monster drink and Chewits don't really work. So I thought, let's get them eating. So we started off with just a humble sandwich. They packed as much as they could, ate it, and then shuffled off. But then we managed to sort of like progress a bit to pasta bakes and pizzas. And at first, they didn't really speak to each other much. But then conversations sort of like started. First, it was very much of, that pizza's in the oven, I'm going for a cig, don't let it burn. But then things developed. Then it got to a point of, going back to the pizza example, there's a bit of an assembly line here of young men chopping. And there'd be conversations like this. Oh, do you know what? I quite like her, you know. What do you mean you quite like her? You're punching. She's well above your league, mate. No, man, don't be silly. No, I think there's something that she looked at me the other day. What do you mean? But what are you going to say? You're just going to just stand there? Well, I don't know. So things were happening, and I kind of smiled. I thought, okay, this is interesting. But then back to the music. These were the lunchtime sessions. And then there was a young man in one of the sessions. He came in and he went, right, I've got something. I went, okay. So recording music, load up the computer, microphone set, backing track loaded, and he recorded a song in one take with everybody in the room about how his mum died. The response in the room was really interesting. It wasn't overly excited. There wasn't like claps and whooping of a big movie moment. There wasn't complete heartbreak. There was just a level of just acceptance which summed up in a really eloquent way. That's proper, that, mate. Send us that tune. I think there's a lot in that. And when I think of situations like that, as well as some of other working situations over my career, I see lots of translations between my youth work world and sort of like day-to-day connections and working with teenagers. Firstly, I'm very much aware that I can be the whooping cheerleader, and I'm thinking of trying to plant seeds of advice because of what's of benefit to them. But I'm kind of getting the sense that they're getting a bit tired of my youth work inspirational mode about nuggets of advice. I can almost hear their eyes roll at times. But it's seeds which maybe were picked up in some way or another, either when it's relevant to them or by somebody who's more relevant to their lives than me at that moment. And there's also the situations where everybody wants to be liked. I want to be liked. Because I want them to be able to want to spend time with me, or at least don't mind spending time with me. And I want to be liked by people that I'm invested in, even though I've got ultimate responsibility, because I want to have some fun along the way. And it's a really interesting dynamic of just seeing translate to day-to-day life. So thinking of this, and thinking of reflecting over my 18 years working as a youth worker in a variety of settings, what I want to share with you all today are 5 tips, in no particular order of importance, of principles that I've been experimenting with, that I want to share with you. I continue to experiment with them, and hopefully you can get something from them too. So tip 1, talk whilst engaging in a shared activity. You're in conversations, pauses, reflections, little murmurs or thinking. They're all natural. But doing something to fill in the blanks helps so much. Walking and talking is great. Food, cooking, works well as well. Recreational activities which are stop and start by nature. For example, I'm a very good pool player. So it works really well for me because I can beat people really badly and I have bragging points and a bit of kudos connection as well. So that works well for me. Even as a non-smoker, spending some time with the smokers to get some fresh air with them, sometimes can help as well, because it's just a conversation. Tip 2, share elements of your life. Vulnerability builds trust. Reflect on this for a moment. If someone asked you lots of questions, gave you lots of advice, and you knew next to nothing about them, wouldn't it feel a bit weird? Wouldn't it? And the thing about it is that context around you is so important. You may be the older person in this dynamic and you've got the numbers on the board. That's absolutely fantastic. Tangible bits of advice and conversations you have with a teenager, that happens, but how you made them feel will stick. As long as you're transparent. Great, proud moments, embarrassing, questionable moments, and everything in between. Tip 3, talk through taboos instead of shutting down the conversation. If a young person's got a question in their mind and they don't verbalize it, they don't get it out in some way, how will it be resolved? An unanswered question is a cliffhanger. How long can it stay that way? Examples of some questions that I've had in my career. Can you get pregnant from anal sex? Why am I going to work at McDonald's when I can make more money selling weed? And not necessarily a question, let me just sort of set this up for a moment. There is a young woman in her handbag, and she has a knife in there. And when asked why she's got the knife in her bag, she says, it's the last thing of my ex-boyfriends that I have. Try your best not to scare or judge. Aim to really respect, reassure, and inform. This helps with hypothetical situations as well as real-life situations. Your instinct, you want to get in there, you really want to help because your intention is coming from a good place. But if you shut it down, you're kept at arm's length. The more you know, the more you can help. Let me leave you with this as a thought. A Google search engine. Over time, it picks up on your browser habits. And it doesn't judge. Over time, as you use it, it becomes a tailored source of education, entertainment, and utility. It gets to know you over a period of time, and it doesn't judge. There might be something in that. Tip 4, see with what you're presented with and respond. Stephen Covey says, first seek to understand and then be understood. I believe this to be rooted in humility, observation, and long-term strategy. So let's look at that, of humility, observation, and long-term strategy. If you acknowledge opinions, are attentive to behavior, and do this consistently over a period of time, your ability to form stronger connections with teenagers will dramatically increase. And tip 5, embrace full range of power levels. Interactions. None of us interact in the same way all of the time. Leader, collaborator, follower. We all fluctuate. That fluctuating humanizes you. Let me give an example. And to help me with this example, let me use the world's expert on DIY, YouTube. Teenager as leader means they go down the YouTube rabbit hole of finding ways to do a particular task. They create the tool list, what's got to do, and more importantly, the rationale of why. They talk to you about it, and then you go. Teenagers collaborate. You both go down your YouTube rabbit holes, what you need to do and why, come together, work out, and split between who's doing what in the project. And teenager as follower is you go down the YouTube rabbit hole, find out everything that's needed, the tools, the process of what you've got to do, and if anything goes wrong, you use them as a get-out clause. I want to leave you with this story. So in addition to my main work, I've been doing some work on a couple of evenings a week called detached youth work, which for those that don't know is essentially building relationships with young people on the street. I was talking to a group of young people, and there was this group of girls just observing us. And one of them comes up to me and goes, "Are you a youth worker?" "Yeah." I went, "Yes." And then she said, "Let me tell you about my life." And I went, "Where is this going to go?" She begins to tell me about how her dad has been locked up for a long sentence of a sexual nature, and how her mum is really struggling to keep it together and is telling her to keep a lid on it, don't say anything, do not show us up. And within this, I thought to myself, why did she speak to me? This was the first time I met this young person. It's interesting because she was observing me interacting with other people, and for whatever reason, she felt that I was safe to talk to. And essentially, all of the principles that I've outlined in this talk point to one thing. If you create the right environment, relationships can get very, very interesting. I'm going to be a dad this year. And I've had really great conversations with men around what being a father means. One of my mates said, watching a child trying to make sense of things teaches you a lot. And as I think of that, it really brings me back to the simple, universal, humble truth that we're all trying to make sense of things. And as long as we're open, a positive interaction between an older adult and a teenager is always there waiting to happen, as long as we enable it to. Thank you.